Welcome to HQ Live. We are here today with Emily Taylor. I'm so excited that you are here. She is the Collage Quilter, and she has lots and lots of fun stuff to show us today and can share some of her techniques. And this is something that I have secretly been wanting to do for probably at least 3 years now, and I haven't been brave enough.
Good, okay.
So you're gonna be my inspiration and you're gonna get me going.
I am here to help you.
Excellent. Okay, let's go ahead and just start by telling us a little bit about you, like your quilting journey. Where did you start at?
Okay, I will tell you a little bit about my quilting journey. So I am a self-trained artist. I've always been an artist since I was a child. And I also talk with my hands. I hope that's not a problem.
That is not a problem as long as you don't hit me. No, you can hit me, I don't care.
So when I have 3 kids, love them dearly, and my son just turned 16, but when he was 2 years old, I was kind of at that period in my life where I was trying to figure out, who am I? What's my next step? And I happened to walk into a local quilt shop. Pine needles, ladies, you all know that, right?
Yep.
So I had an epiphany when I walked in that quilt shop and realized, oh my goodness, I want to design quilt fabric. And so kind of using my art background, I was a mural artist. That's actually how I trained myself. I was a mural artist. And
Really?
I started by knocking door to door in upscale neighborhoods with some photographs. And I'd say, oh, hi, would you be interested in me painting a mural in your home? So that's actually where I kind of honed my skill set, started to. And then I decided I wanted to design quilt fabric. And so I bought a computer and the software, and I would put my kids to bed and stay up until the wee hours of the morning training myself to develop digital artwork. Well, I had developed just the basic skill set to be able to submit a collection to Riley Blake Designs. And so they hired me as a designer, and I was a Riley Blake designer for many years. And then I started a company called PatternJam.com. And Pattern Jam is software that you can go online for free and design your own quilt pattern. And it will put out the cutting instructions and fabric requirements, and then allow you to see what your quilt's going to look like before. So it's like EQ, but it's free online. But I learned a really good lesson about business and having partners and taking investors. And I actually lost everything. I lost, that was a dark time. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to try my hand at collage quilts, because it seems like a really good blend between using fabric, you know, and I love quilts. I love textiles. That's why we're quilters, right?
Exactly.
And, but I can also be a little more artistic with the fabric. And so that's how I got my start. I made my first quilt at the end of 2017 and started my company teaching and developing patterns in 2018. And now I love to design quilt patterns to help people get into collage quilting, and I'm going to help you.
Yes.
And I also teach. So there's a big, I really want people to have success with collage quilts. I want your work to be beautiful. We all want to look at beautiful quilts. So that's my goal, is to develop really awesome, fun, foolproof patterns and to help people have success.
I love the foolproof pattern.
Yep.
Because the one that I was going to try, I think is going to turn into a blob. So I might follow your techniques a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about your website while we're here.
Sure.
It's www.collagequilter.com, Is that correct?
CollageQuilter.com is my website, and from there you can find all of my patterns, my books, and my resources for helping you learn, video tutorials, as well as supplies. Additionally, I am teaching workshops, and I have an events calendar that you can find on the website. You want me to keep going and tell you what else you can find on the website?
Well, let me just let people know that website, there should be a link in the description so you can get to that website easier. But yeah, you've got lots of fun stuff there.
Well, I want it to be a one-stop shop for you to be able to go there and know that you're going to find the resources that you need. So one more resource I want to tell you about that I think is really helpful. I run a couple large Facebook groups, and I do live videos once a week. Okay. So that's a great place to find me and hop on. I'm giving tips and showing what's going on in my studio, and I'll answer your question. So that's broadcast on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, as well as Facebook. Now, Facebook.
Okay.
There's two Facebook groups, Collage Quilter and then Collage Quilter Academy. This is a great resource if you're working on one of my patterns to be a part of that group, because you can see what everybody else is doing with the pattern as well. And we do quilt-alongs, and it is a wonderful community. I mean, you know how quilters are, just awesome, but these quilters come from all over the world, and it's so fun.
And is that a private group that you have to request to be part of? Okay. Are both of the groups?
Both of them are private, yep.
So explain the difference between the two groups real quick.
So Collage Quilter is a really great resource to go and see all kinds of stuff. So we've got, Laura Heine is in that group, and Danny Amazonas, and Susan Carlson, and all the wonderful, well-established artists are in that group, as well as beginners. So it runs the gamut, and you're gonna see all kinds of different ideas and what people are working on. So it's an inspiring group. There's people with a lot of knowledge in there. So that's a great group to join. And then the Collage Quilter Academy is specifically for people who are working on my patterns. And I'm very present in that group, and you can ask questions and you can interact with people who are working on the same thing.
That is a great resource. And I will admit, I've been kind of stalking the Collage Quilter group.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the Academy one. But yeah, I actually have several pictures on my phone. I just took some screenshots of, I want to do this kind of design.
There's some great stuff
I want to try this. And and just seeing some of the comments that people leave and how nice and inspiring and supportive they are.
Really, that is the thing. These communities are, I love them. Yeah. I feel very affectionate towards the people that are in these groups, because it's a group of, they are communities that are very supportive and helpful.
Exactly. So let's jump into some show and tell.
Sounds great.
I'm excited to see what you brought with you today.
Okay, good. Do you want me to talk about each one? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, tell us kind of a little bit of the background on each one.
Okay, so this is my most recent quilt, and this one is it's called Wee Green Beasties. I started this about a year ago, if you can believe it, just because I was experimenting with this new technique that I'm going to share with you in a minute. But basically, you can see this little froggy, and then we've got a beetle up here. I'm going to slide this up just so we can see. Take a look at that cute beetle. And so there are all these little green critters in this quilt, and green is my favorite color. And anyway, so this is my most recent pattern that I've put out. So let's keep looking. I'm super inspired by, like you, Kristina, I love fabric, and I'm inspired by these designers, Anna Marie Horner and Kate Bassett, and I love them. So I had a lot of fun making that and incorporating my collages into a traditional quilt,
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is called Adoration.
And we're going to hold this one up really high to this front camera over here.
Okay.
So they can see.
There we go.
Oh my goodness, that is gorgeous.
Now, I want you to see if you can, do you recognize this image? Does anybody recognize this image?
Painting.
It is a famous painting. So this is based off of Gustav Klimt's painting called Mother and Child. Gustav Klimt is one of my very favorite painters. He is an Austrian artist that he painted at the turn of the 20th century. And I love the subject of this because I think the emotion is really captured that a mother feels towards her children. And, of course, this is how I feel for my kids. And so I just loved it and thought, I'm going to challenge myself. And this is a challenge. This was a good one, but I love the way it turned out.
A lot of pieces. So does this have a specific direction that it goes, or?
This is the top, yeah. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the top.
Okay. I didn't know if it was one that we could, you turn sideways and get a different look.
Well, I mean, I guess you can. Do you want to look at it differently?
No, we're good.
All right. Let's take that one.
Okay.
Where do you want to?
I'll just set it with the others.
Okay.
Okay. And do you want me to hold that one and you can talk about it?
Okay. So this one is called The Horse. I love, when I was a kid, I told you I was an artist as a child, and the thing that I drew all the time, over and over and over, were horses, because it's what I always wanted. But the thing was, this one, I wanted to challenge myself and do a photorealistic sort of looking horse in non-realistic colors. So while this looks realistic, if you look closely, it's just full of purple and blue and green. I mean, it's got a lot of color in there. And this is an advanced quilt. And what I think qualifies to make it an advanced quilt is that I'm paying attention to more values. So the more values that you're trying to interpret in your collage quilt, the more difficult it's going to be. Can you take a guess how many values are in this?
I have no clue. 100?
No. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. And this is an interesting way that I teach collage quilts. This has about 8 value sets.
Oh, I was thinking like
there is variation.
My bad.
That's right. There's variation in all those fabrics, but there are only about 8 values in this.
Okay.
And so the fewer number of values that you interpret, the easier it becomes. So the minimum number of values, we'll talk about that in just a minute to have success with a collage quilt. But anyway, this is an advanced quilt.
Okay, that is beautiful. And I love that you named it The Horse.
Yep. Okay, I am incredibly inspired by different artists. One is an artist that I found on Pinterest. Isn't Pinterest just the best, like, for inspiration?
Yes.
So there's an oil painter. He is also a self-taught artist, and his name is John Powell. And I started seeing his artwork, and I just loved it because of the richness of the colors, and he's a real maximalist. When you look at his paintings, they're just full of pattern and texture and repeat, and mostly he does still lifes. And so I was really inspired by his artwork, and I bought one of his paintings recently that's hanging in my kitchen. But this is kind of inspired by him, with the lush, beautiful colors that we've got going on, and juxtaposed, that kind of orangey purple in here. I just love the mix of all of these colors. So this was a really, really fun project for me to make and dive in a little bit more in exploring how I want to, what is my style? And I think I'm a maximalist. I love color and tons of stuff, So anyway, that's that quilt.
Perfect.
Now I'm going to show you this quilt I love this quilt too. This one is called June Bloom. And this is,
hold it up really high so they can
wherever
see the
you
whole
want,
thing.
wherever you need to see it. Yeah.
There we go.
So this is, I'm going to start to tell you about the 2 different types of quilts that I make. Okay.
Okay.
So this is what I call, this was made using a foundation panel, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But a foundation panel is really a beginner pattern. Beginner, can you believe it? That this is a beginner pattern?
I got to peek again. No, looks advanced to me.
Yeah, it's not. And the other thing that I want you to notice is this is what I call edge-to-edge collage. So from here over, the entire composition is collaged. Some of the other quilts, let's see, I'll show you some things coming up that are not edge-to-edge collage. Well, in fact, this one right here is, these are traditional blocks.
Okay.
So you see just one collaged element in the block, and that's how the Wee Green Beasties pattern was also. So I'm kind of, again, exploring different types of collage quilts, and the way these are made is a little bit differently. So let's keep going, and then I'm going to show you how I make these different types of collages. Okay.
Cute.
So once in a while I like to make something that's just a small fun project. It doesn't have to be massive. In fact, I'm kind of enjoying doing that, just making these smaller ones. And I want to show you how I hang this one in my studio, because I love this little guy. This is Dudley the duck. And you can see he's not quilted, but he is collaged. And one other thing that I love and that I'm kind of starting to explore is embroidery, embellishing with embroidery. And the other thing that you'll see is this is not traditional quilt fabric that he's on top of. What is it? Probably, I don't know, tweed? What do you call this? Wool or something? Yeah. Anyway, so I collaged him, and he is not an edge-to-edge collage. I put him on the fabric after he's collaged and then embellish him with all of these things. And then a great way to finish this, to hang him up, was, now this is just a stabilizer for the embroidery, obviously. I put a facing on it, left these corners open, and then this is a poster hanger. So I can just use the bottom of the poster hanger, and voila. It's a really great, fun way to hang up a collage. And you can do that with any size.
That seems like it would be great for like holidays and stuff. If you have a certain spot, just do a different one for each holiday.
Yes, that's exactly right. And as I was working on the next one, so this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing a holiday design. Can you guess the holiday?
Let me guess, maybe Valentine's Day?
Right, good. So I just finished embroidering this last night. I think I'm going to add a little bit more, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a facing on it. And my daughter, okay, I know I have succeeded if my daughter who works with me is like, oh, I love that, I want it. That's
like the highest praise a mom can get.
The highest. Most of the time, so this is Amelia. She's my assistant. She's studying art and design, and she is just this little sassafras. I cannot impress her at all. And she's like, quilts. Like she is not super into them, but this, she wants it. So I feel like I nailed it with this one. Anyway, this again, not edge to edge, but this one incorporates a lot of different things. So I want to point them out to you. This little element here is collaged, clearly. This element here is collaged. And then I did some fussy cutting, which was really fun to kind of bulk this up. And I did embroidery. And can you tell what I've done right here?
Did you draw on there?
Yeah. But it's with Inktense pencils.
Love it. So do some shadowing there.
Yeah, some shadow. So this is all the same fabric, and I needed to make it distinct enough to make it look like it's a little banner. So I just had a lot of fun making this, kind of incorporating many different techniques: collage, fussy cutting, embroidery, and painting. So anyway.
That's fantastic.
Okay.
Now to see how many techniques of quilting you're going to put on the top.
I'm going to have you do the quilting. I am not good at quilting. I've decided, like last night, I was just like, I give up with this. I'm not doing this anymore. Okay, so pass that along.
Let's go ahead, since we're done with the bigger quilts, let's take a seat so that we're in the proper views here.
This is the last show and tell piece that I brought. Okay, so again, this is the little collage element and fussy cutting, and I've incorporated this into a quilt block. So this is going to be part of another quilt that my sea creatures. I've got an octopus that's in the works, and we're going to do a jellyfish in this one and some fish. So that one's going to be really fun. I'm excited about that. Now, can I talk to you about the different ways that you can do a collage quilt?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Emily, thank you so much for sharing all of those fantastic quilts with us.
Of
course.
I am
so excited, and I really want to learn how to do this now. So can you tell us the tools that you use, the supplies, and then let's dive in.
Okay, sounds great. Okay. I'm happy to do that. All right, so I have developed, so first of all, we're going to talk about supplies.
Okay.
Number one is fabric, and this is the fun part, right? Like, we can just use as much fabric as we want. Fabric galore. I just love fabric. I love it.
I want to see your fabric stash.
Come to my house. Come to my studio. I love fabric. Like, the more I work with it, the more passionate I become. Okay, so fabric is number one. Number 2 is a great pair of scissors. You can see these have gotten a lot of use. They're kind of grimy, but these are my go-to scissors. Let me tell you why. These are called Karen K. Buckley 6-inch perfect scissors. These happen to be just the perfect size for the cuts that I'm making. Additionally, they've got a really fine serrated edge, so they cut through the fabric and the steam like butter. Okay, so fabric, scissors, and then we're going to you need to make sure, I really like, do you want to hand me that steam-a-seam?
I would love to.
So I just want to show you this. So this steam-a-seam is light steam-a-seam too. This is the adhesive that I have I really love this adhesive. This is what I highly recommend. You can use, for what I'm going to show you in a minute, you can use glue as well, but I've become really addicted to that. So you'll prepare your fabric with the steam-a-seam. You can see there's a piece that's not been prepared, but
at what point do you put the steam-a-seam on your fabric?
Great question. So what I'll do is I will go into my stash and I'll just gather as much fabric for the section of the collage that I'm working on. And a lot of it, like this, might not have the steam-a-seam ready for it. So when I'm selecting my palette, I'll pull in everything that I think I might want to use, and then I'll cut a small piece about that size and prepare it with the steam-a-seam at that point.
Okay.
So I gather my fabric, and then I prepare anything I might use. And then the next thing that you're going to need is a pattern. So I make 2 types of patterns. So we're going to talk about this type of pattern first, because this is really what, if you haven't made a collage quilt before, this is a great way to start. This, so my patterns look like this. They come with the instructions, but then also inside the pattern is the pre-printed foundation panel. So the pre-printed foundation panel, you can see, has the design printed in gray tones. This one is how, I've been working on this, demonstrating with this. I brought 2 of them so that you can see that no 2 collages are ever going to turn out the same. Even though you're starting with the same design, the fabric selection that you put on there is going to customize it.
Okay.
And that's one thing I really love about collage quilts, that you will never see the same thing twice, even if it's the same pattern. Like, for example, let me show you this. So this is, we've got the tea party quilt behind us here. So there's a green teapot, here's a green teapot. I mean, even though they're the same design, they're never gonna look the same, because you use different fabric and you might cut it differently. So every single collage turns out to be one of a kind.
Yeah, I love having everything unique. That is just,
it's really, really fun.
I don't like having the same thing as everybody else.
Right. Okay. So those are the elements that we're going to need to get started with this. The pattern, the scissors, the fabric. Make sure that your fabric has been prepared with adhesive, and then you're ready to just dig in.
Okay.
Like easy peasy, right? So we're going to dig in on this one, and then in a minute I'm going to show you another type of pattern. Okay. And a technique for working on that type of pattern as well. Does that sound good?
That's fantastic.
Okay. I'm going to get this one out of the way. And
I want to just point something out real quick, just so our viewers can see it. Can I grab that one back?
Oh, you bet.
You can keep it folded. But if we can show this one, you've already covered with fabric. But this one is the original.
Right.
So you can see how that pattern looks how it comes, and then how it is after you applied the fabric there.
Yeah, and so this is kind of, thanks for pointing that out. One thing I want to mention, the gray tones help guide your fabric selection and your fabric placement. So you can choose to do this pattern like we've done on here, kind of a chinoiserie pot. This one, I just happen to have this amazing Michael Miller fabric from a few years ago, and I was like, it doesn't get better than that. I'm going to just do that. So I did it in one piece, and it's very seldom that I will use a solid piece of fabric for one area, because I love the look of collage so much. But yeah, you caught me on that one, that I used a solid piece of fabric, but it turned out beautiful because it was the right piece of fabric.
Yeah, I think it's just fabulous there.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to love this. It's so fun and so simple. All right, so once I have the fabric that I want to use, the next thing that I'm going to do is, we talked about values a few minutes ago, right? And how the more values that you have in a collage, the more complicated it's going to be. The minimum number of values that I think makes it fun and interesting is 3.
Okay.
3 values is easy peasy to figure out. And so what we're going to do is you're going to help me right here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm actually going to have you just backtrack just a little bit. So some of our viewers might have questions, what are you talking about with values? Most artists, that's, second nature. Can you just give us kind of a brief description of what you're meaning by values?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a brief description and then I'm going to show you because I think that's going to be more memorable. Yeah. So when I'm talking about value, I'm talking about the light or darkness of a fabric. Okay? That's all. So that's really easy, right? Relative value is pretty easy to see. Here's an example. Here's kind of a mid-tone. We don't, and most quilters, we buy fabric that's in the mid-tone range. Like that's the fabric that is most prominent. That's what we see and what we love. It's very rare that you have a huge assortment of very lights or very darks. So most of the fabric that we have is in the mid-tone. So there's a mid-tone. Well, how do I determine where this falls on the spectrum? All we're worried about is relative value. So all I have to do is hold another piece of fabric up to it.
Do I get to pick a light one?
Yep, you pick a light one.
How about that one?
Oh, ta-da! Okay, right there.
Just pretty much talking about light versus dark versus medium.
We've got light, medium, dark.
Okay.
Now, did you need any special tools to figure that out?
I just used my eyeballs.
Yep, you use your eyeballs.
And I didn't even have my glasses on.
That's right. Okay, good. And all you do is compare. This is relative value. So compared to this piece of fabric, this is light. Compared to this piece of fabric, this is dark. Relative value is all we're worried about.
Okay.
So when we're looking at something like this, just think, okay, I'm going to divide this into 3 value sets. I'm going to do my darkers here, my mid-tone in there, and then I'm going to go lighter up here, as indicated by what's printed on the fabric.
That's fantastic.
So we're going to
scoot this over just a little bit here so we can get that in that. Oops, sorry.
We're dropping fabric.
Sorry.
Okay. So the way I'm going to approach this is after I've selected a wide variety of fabric, I'm going to create value sets. Now the idea, what makes collage so interesting is being able to incorporate a lot of different fabric.
Okay, we've got all of the green fabrics here. And you want me to separate them now?
Yep.
Or?
So what I want you to do is, we've had our little discussion about value. The easiest way to do this is going to be to sort them into value sets. And we're going to do 3 value sets.
Okay, I'm just going to start with the easy ones.
Yep.
I know those are dark.
That's right.
This looks like it might be a dark one down there. Let's put this one over in the lighter pile. Mediums. See, it gets a little tricky when you get ones like this that have multiple colors in it. I'm going to keep that in medium.
Good call.
Put those lights and darks.
Pull them down here just a little so the camera can see what we're doing here.
And we'll go medium.
You're doing so good.
Like, can I make a 4th pile?
You can make a 4th pile.
Okay, we're making a 4th pile. Okay, put those dark. Put that there.
That one's really tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go dark on that one. We'll make a 5th pile.
Let's put that one here. I think that goes there. You're doing so good.
I feel like I'm being tested.
You are. This is a test.
Oh, 2 colors. Right there.
Good.
Dark.
So while you're doing this, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the fabric that I like to incorporate in my collages.
Okay.
You'll see, first and foremost, I really like printed fabric. I like printed fabric that has a tight motif so that we, for example, like this, so that any single cut that we make is going to have a little bit of pattern in it. I also like to use batiks. For example, the batik you're just going to deal with right here.
That will be in the light one when you're done talking.
Okay, so I love batiks and I love mixing those. The one thing that I don't use a lot of is solids, but I had it in my stash, so I'm going to use it. Okay. And that's one thing that's great about collage quilting is that you can just use all the pieces of fabric that are in your stash. I want to talk about just a few other pieces because you mentioned, oh, this one might be a little tricky. I want to show you something. If we pulled out anything that had something that had a little bit of dash, it becomes a little more boring. Having that little touch, those little touches of color in there are going to make this collage a lot more rich. That's where the richness comes from, these little touches of color. Overall, we can see this is a very green palette, and we've got dark, medium, a little lighter, and the very lightest. And this is perfect. You've done a great job. Now, the other question, the other thing I would say is there variation in each set? Yeah, there's a little bit of variation in this set. But if I compare it to, say, this, it's very clear that this is dark and this is light. So
now I'm second guessing this one.
That's okay. I'm glad you pointed that out because sometimes there is a piece of fabric like that where it's a little bit, I'm not sure where this goes. It could go either way. And if that's the case, that's a really valuable piece of fabric to have because it's great for transitions. It's a great piece to have, and you can put it in both that set and that set. So don't be afraid of using those fabrics that might be a little bit confusing. You know, they're transition pieces.
I wouldn't have thought about that. That's a great tip.
The only piece that's kind of interesting here that I want to point out is this one. So can you identify why this might be a little troubling?
Well, if I cut out just a certain spot, it might only have the reds and oranges.
That's right. So this is an interesting piece of fabric because it's dealing with complementary colors. Everything else here that I'm looking at is an analogous color palette. Do you know what analogous colors are?
I do not. I'm not a trained artist.
Neither am I. I'm entirely self-taught. So analogous colors are those colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So we've got green and blue and a little bit of yellow. Okay. So those, that's an analogous color palette. These are complementary.
They're on the opposite side of the color wheel. Right. I do know that one.
Yes, these are opposite colors. And therefore, if we use this, that red is going to be, that's the highest contrast that we can create against the green. So we've got to be a little bit careful about using red. Now, a touch of it might be really interesting and add that like just secret sauce, but kind of be careful with it.
Okay.
Just kind of things to be aware.
Yeah.
And these are things that I will teach you.
Okay.
Okay, so now we've got kind of our palette here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig in and I'm going to show you how complicated this is. You're going to die. It's so easy. It's ridiculous. All right, so at this point, the thing that I spend the most time on and that I enjoy the most is selecting my fabric. Once I have selected the fabric, then it's time to dig in on the collage, and that is like Zen. It's just relaxation, and this is where you will never want to stop collage quilting again. It's so fun.
I don't think my husband's gonna like you.
No, we're gonna use up all your scraps, right?
Then I'll just buy more.
You use up all your stash. Okay.
But he'll never see me again because all I'll do is want to collage quilt.
It will make you the happy wife, happy life,
okay.
Right?
Yep, we'll go with that one.
Okay. So I'm going to take a scrap out of here, and this is how complex it is.
And that was the medium pile.
Yep.
Okay. And it's already got the steam on the back.
Yep, it's got the steam seam. I'm just trimming off some of those, trimming off some of the threads. Will you pass me my my pins?
Whoa, that's a heavy one.
I know, isn't that funny? Okay, so I take a pin. I'm going to score the back so that I can easily peel off the paper from the steam seam.
And the steam seam has two-sided paper, correct?
Yep. So this is the reason that I love steam seam. If you can see, that temporary adhesive kind of sticks to my finger. And the really nice thing is that it's also going to be temporarily stuck to my collage.
So you don't even have to iron it at this point?
Nope. I can do the entire thing temporarily, and if there's anything that I don't like, I can just go back in and peel that off. So look at that. I did a random piece of fabric and I laid it down. And all I'm trying to do at this point is just cover up the gray area. We'll just work on this little section right here.
Okay.
I'm just working on covering up the gray foundation. So I'm going to take my fabric.
And this is the medium gray, so we're picking from the medium fabrics only, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And so take my pin, score it to scratch that back, peel that off, and apply the fabric. Now the thing of it is with a collage, you never want to butt fabric pieces up next to each other. You want to make sure that it's overlapping the surrounding pieces.
Okay.
So, ta-da, there we go. Easy peasy. And that's how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to kind of keep working in that way. So if you want to give it a try, let's start maybe filling in a little bit of this dark area down here.
Okay. I do have a question.
Yeah.
How do you do it around these edges? Because I can't just cut a random piece.
That's a good question. Okay, so just cut a piece. Now, the other thing too that I want to say is, I'll tell you in just a second. So let's look at that piece that you've cut. What if we just round out one of those edges? Will it work right there? Yep, it probably will. So that's what I'll do. So I'll just, after I cut something, especially on that rounded edge, I'm just going to trim it like that so that I end up with a rounded edge piece.
Okay.
Score it. And then just apply it. Now the other thing is I want to make sure that I cover the gray tone as well. So I'm not going to butt up next to it. I'm going to just cover that whole thing.
Okay, so you're just trying to cover everything.
Yep,
and you're not concerned about going over a little bit or keeping it right on those lines.
Right, because this is a guide. And once you get this all covered, nobody's going to see the guide anymore. All they're going to see is your beautiful collage. Okay, dig in. Have fun. Cover this area right here. Let's see how you do.
Okay, do I want to put some contrasting? Let's see, that's got a little point there.
Yeah.
Or just round it out a little. When you're using these fabrics, do you care if they, I'm going to reach across here, if they have curved edges on the fabric or straight edges? Does it matter at all?
So that's a really good question. So if you look at mine, my collages tend to be quite angular. I have lots of angles in them. Other people will cut, like, see how you cut that? That's that's your fingerprint. That's how you, it really is. As many times as I've taught, people kind of develop their own way of cutting. And I've realized that it's really a person's preference and fingerprint. So your cuts, as you kind of get into this flow, this zen, they're going to kind of fall into a similar pattern. It's a weird thing about collage quilting.
Okay.
And so there's no right or wrong. And what we do at this point is we're just cutting and covering, and we're just allowing the fabric to do the work. And so this collage will develop with all of these different shapes and the pattern and the repeat and the slight variation in analogous colors, and it's just going to be so rich. You're gonna love it. Okay.
Okay, I'm not talking anymore, I'm playing.
So easy, I mean easy peasy, right? Like how hard is this?
I did notice a little tiny spot right there didn't get covered, so we'll have to come back and make sure that one gets covered. Let's see. Does it matter how much it overlaps?
Nope, it really doesn't. So the minimum amount is about 1/8 of an inch.
Okay.
More than that, a half, it can go up to a 1/2 inch. So, and you've probably got 1 inch there, that's fine. It's not a problem. We don't want to put, multiple layers on this, but 1, 2 layers is great.
Okay.
Everything will have an overlap.
I'm going to just do a little piece here.
Oh, I was going to mention about the size. So I have a rule of thumb, and the rule of thumb is...
Uh-oh.
No, you're fine. I don't generally cut anything larger than the palm of my hand.
Okay.
And I very rarely cut anything smaller than my thumbnail.
Whew, I didn't mess up.
And in this, for this particular design, that's really easy to accomplish. Now, sometimes I will break my own rule. In fact, I'm a bad rule breaker. when I'm working on the eyeball of a little critter or something, I have to get detail. If I want detail, I have to get it a little bit smaller than my thumbnail. But I have some tricks for using smaller cuts too.
Okay.
Perfect.
Question.
Yes.
I just put that over top this line here. What is that line for?
It's just simply a guide just to kind of make this look more interesting. You can just ignore that entirely.
Okay, so I'm not trying to like change the colors to make it more like a leaf shape
The only thing that I would be careful about is we want to maintain, we want to know where the clementines are. So this is the little clementine topiary. So I'll kind of, and you can kind of see that I've overlapped that a little bit because the clementine pieces, then the orange pieces will overlap on top of that. Yep.
Okay. So how hard would it be to change these clementines into lemons? Because I love blue, white, and yellow.
Oh, yes. Piece of cake.
I'm thinking I might do this one, but with lemons.
Yeah, piece of cake. So I'm going to teach you something else
okay.
Right now that's kind of a fun way to change these clementines into lemons, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to go to another type of pattern that I create. This is called a foundation panel pattern. And we're going to go to now a parchment pressing pattern. Okay.
And these panels can be purchased on your website?
Yeah, they come in the pattern. So when you open up the pattern, you can feel it in there. You can see it in there, right? So inside the pattern comes the foundation panel.
So you don't even have to buy it separately?
No.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you just use your own fabric and voila. Okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so now we're going to pull over a few more. We're going to pull over some.
Are we done with these green piles?
Sure. Yeah.
Or should I just kind of set them over here?
So I want to teach you another way to do a collage pattern. This is called a parchment pressing pattern. And this is how I've made the little Valentine thing, the duck. It's how I made this. So the idea with this is I can build my collage on a piece of parchment paper. Who knew? Parchment paper. So just like baking paper, it's the same paper that you use for making cookies. And the reason that this works really well is because it's a non-stick surface on both sides and it's heat resistant. So let's pull over our little iron here too. The goal with this is we build it on parchment paper, and you can see I've got the pattern right here, and it has I've labeled 4 different values. This is a raven. This comes from my Take Flight book that's on my website. And so I just wanted to share this with you because you can see how easily it is to do exactly what we were doing. We sorted the values into 4 values, light to dark, and then I actually put the values there. And then I can apply the pieces of fabric right to this. Let's just go ahead and use this while we've got it here.
Hand that to you, move this over.
Because I think we can use blue on our raven just fine.
So on this pattern, you said it's in your book.
Yeah.
Is this something that you can print out at any size you want?
Yeah.
And just like adjust the sizing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my book Take Flight it has multiple birds in it, and it has instructions about how to take it and what size if you want this size. I really like this size because sometimes it's easier to do a larger collage. The space that we're trying to cover is a little bit bigger, and that makes it easier. And the other thing too is it allows me to put more color, more fabric into it. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you want a larger collage.
Okay.
You don't want it to be small. I'm going to pull this out just because it gives me a really good reference. So for example, let's just look at this bird here. We've got a light area right there and a light area right here. So I brought this for a different project, but remember we had a little lesson about relative value. So that dark color kind of looks like it could go right in the darks, doesn't it?
It does.
Yep. And I think, I bet we're gonna find that this might have been used in here. Aha, ta-da. So we've got some of that going on. And then let's go a little bit lighter. So we're doing the same thing we did. We're kind of sorting out the values, right? We've got a lot of really light blue right there. So that kind of is so if I were to use, I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 values right there, don't you think?
definitely.
Now we can kind of add to that with these other fabrics. Oh, look at that. Perfect. Perfect match, right?
I'm so glad you put it in the pile that I thought it was supposed to go in.
Good. Okay, and I think that one would go there. Here's a darker piece. I think I would put that there.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll bet we see it in here, right? Because I'm using scraps from other projects.
I'm never throwing away another scrap.
That's right, don't. No, if it's this big, you have my permission to throw it away.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, I just want to show you real quick how easy peasy it is to build this little guy. So we've got our darkest colors here. We've got
So the 4s are the darkest?
actually the 1s. You can't even see the 1s.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got the
lightest.
2s or the mids. So we're going to jump, I want to jump to this pile right here. And this is what we would put right here in that section.
This section right here, it looks like it has 2 numbers.
Yeah, you know what? You're right, because I think I probably made a change to it. Let's see. I lightened it up because when I've done this bird multiple times, and I kind of like this to be a little bit darker. I want it to blend with the bird a little bit better.
Okay.
So I think that was some information for myself because I was just changing the value there.
So I like that you have that freedom though.
Uh-huh.
It's not you have to use this color value or
Right.
this color in this spot. You can change things up a little bit.
Totally, you can totally mix things up. And I actually am really glad I brought this bird because although he's black, ravens are black, clearly we're incorporating, there's not one single piece of black fabric in here. And yet he'll read that way because if we get the values right, then you'll know it's a raven, right?
Yeah.
So with this, all I'm going to do is I'll cut the piece of fabric that I've selected for that section of the bird. And because we've got kind of a soft edge there, I want to make sure that my edge is a little bit soft. And I'm going to apply it right there. So, okay, so I go through the same process. I'm going to peel off my paper. And then just apply it. Now it's sticky here, but sometimes because parchment paper is a non-stick surface, it doesn't stick super well and it might slide off, and that's why it's really super handy to have a little wand iron, and all I like to do is just press it here. Okay, so then I'll just continue to build right on this little project. Scratch it off and apply. Now, sometimes when I scratch that off, I'm going to pull a little thread, and I like to just trim those threads.
Okay.
But there we go. Now, as I build this collage, each piece is going to stick a little bit better to the fabric beneath it. So I'm not going to have to glue, I'm not going to have to iron every single piece.
Okay.
And if I do feel like I need to press it, at this time I want to be kind of careful not to press everything because I want the flexibility of being able to take my tweezers if there's something I want to change and dig in there and pull it off.
Okay.
The bottom line that's really fun about a project like this is when I get the whole project done, and obviously this is going to take, this one would take a little bit longer than the time that we have here, but I want to show you the magic of using a parchment press, doing a parchment pressing pattern. So when I have something, so if this were all finished, I would then iron it. So I'm just going to show you what happens right now, even though we'll just pretend that the whole bird is done. But really, I'm going to take him home and finish him.
Okay. While you're ironing, you've got this on the parchment paper from this pattern that you had. Did you just use like a light box and just trace directly over the pattern then?
Yep.
Okay.
A light box or hanging it up in the window.
Okay.
One other thing I want to point out that I forgot to is I want to show you the work surface that I'm working on. This is just a piece of foam core that I bought at Hobby Lobby, and I had them cut it to about this size, so it can really just sit on my lap. And then I put felt on it. The felt protects the foam core from the heat of the iron so that I can use a little iron on it. And you saw how I can put pins in it. So this is a great little work surface.
That's fun.
Okay, so if we were pretending that I had this whole bird finished, again, I gotta make sure I've got him all ironed, but I will be able to peel the whole thing off like a sticker.
Oh, wow, and they're all...
So that would be the whole, you know, pretend it's the whole bird, and the whole thing sticks together, and then I can apply this to a different background. And that's how I've made the teacups and those other patterns that I showed you. So the great thing about doing parchment pressing is the flexibility that it gives you to create your own composition. Create your own composition and the size that you want. Now, if you're doing a foundation pattern, it's going to be one set size. But this gives you the option to do a small little wall hanging or put it in a whole quilt. So that's that. That's parchment pressing and foundation. What other questions do you have for me?
I did have a question. Does it matter if you do the dark colors first and then the lighter colors, or does it matter like the depth at all? Like
that's a good question.
Background?
Really good question. So, and I get that a lot. The way I work when I'm working on something like this is I tend to hop around. And that's why you see some of the light done and some of the dark. And I tend to start on the edges of the spectrum. So I'll do the dark and a little bit of the light, and then I'll work in towards the middle of the spectrum.
Okay, so you can see kind of the transition a little bit better. Okay.
And when I lay down my dark values and my light values first, then I know it's not going outside of that spectrum. I have to keep everything inside this spectrum.
Okay.
And so the other thing too that I want to mention, and this is an important tip. When you become a collage quilter and you're doing this, you're going to realize how important it is to expand your spectrum of fabric. Expand into the really dark fabrics and the really light. As traditional quilters, we generally don't like those things, but now as a collage quilter, you're going to start thinking a little bit more like an artist, that you need those darker colors and those lighter colors to really provide a more realistic, interesting collage that has a lot of depth.
And you are just using scraps, so you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch.
Right, unless you don't have darks or lights. I mean, you know, the one thing too, you can flip your fabric over, your printed fabric, and that all of a sudden gives you a lighter piece of fabric to work with too.
I love that you mentioned that.
I do it all the time. With that adoration quilt, I did that probably more than I used the front side of fabric. I was using the reverse side of fabric.
Yeah, we have a joke here that we paid for both sides of the fabric.
That's
We're going
right.
to use both sides of the fabric.
I love that.
So do you do very much with landscapes and the proportions, you know, from close up and far away?
Gosh,
and
that's a
laying
good
those
question.
in order?
I have not done a lot of landscapes. I've done a few, 2 or 3 maybe. It is something that interests me. I would like to do more landscapes because I think there's a lot of opportunity to create something that I haven't seen in other people's collage quilts yet. So it's something that I want to do. I think it would be really, really fun to do.
Okay, something that we can play with.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. So do you have any other tips?
Oh my gosh, I have so many more tips.
Do you want to?
But I don't.
But we want everybody to come to your website. So again, remind everybody your website.
Yeah, the website is collagequilter.com. And on Collage Quilter, you'll find all the resources that you need.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
I'm not going to get any work done for the next month.
This is work.
It is, actually.
So fun.
Yes. It's lovely when you get paid to do what you love.
Right?
So thank you also to all of our viewers for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next month.